I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design. Today, we are visiting with Denver-based designer Nadia Watts, a creative with a very strong collaborative spirit. What does that mean? Well, it's an idea that is uniquely different based on the individual's perspective. In Nadia's case, collaboration is an idea inextricably tied to her work. You're going to hear about that as well as an exploration into her work and how she uses elements of her design to bounce off other parts to add depth and detail to the work itself. Really interesting, very cool, and I hope you enjoy this conversation by design with Nadia Watts. We'll be right back. I am incredibly proud of Convo by Design in year 10, and I'm equally proud of my partnership with Thermosol. They've been presenting partners of Convo by Design for 3 years now, and there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide for a few reasons. They were the first company to design, patent the technology here in the U.S. dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a U.S. brand, a U.S. manufacturer in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody. I have had the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and you probably know this, that the idea of luxury has changed and continues to change, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered a luxury space. And if you want to add steam, you have one true option. It's Thermosol. And now, Thermosol, the industry leader in steam, bath equipment, and technology since 1958, is enhancing their already stellar family of products with new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas. Available in 3 design configurations, each sauna is handcrafted from clear Western red cedar or Nordic spruce, inspired by the brilliance of Northern European sauna technology and design. A luxury bathroom isn't luxury without steam. If you want luxury, you have one option. It's Thermosol. Check them out at thermosol.com and at Thermosol on the socials. Do you like doing virtual? Do you enjoy that? Have you gotten to the point where it's so normal now that you enjoy it?
I think so. I'm very animated in my face and hands. So I think that's the only part is you can't really, when you're in person with someone, there's a certain level of guard that you have about facial expressions or whatnot. But when you're on the phone with someone, you're a little bit more, thinking face or whatnot. So I think it's somewhere between the two where you're being seen, but the physical body is not in front of you. So I don't know. I've got
your thinking face
versus my that's not going to work. And how do I tell you that's horrible?
You know what's interesting?
That's more for clients, but
it's funny because that's the thing too. Like when you're sitting in front of somebody personally, it's very easy to distract. Like when somebody has an idea that you think is absolutely horrendous,
yes,
and you can sort of pawn it off. But when you're on a box, when you're in a box on TV, it's very, very hard to do that.
And it's more, with Michelle and Katie, we do Zooms every other week. And that's the part that's funny because sometimes I'll just think and not move. And they're like, are you frozen? I'm like, no, I'm thinking, this is my thinking face.
That's awesome. Just to go
I'm like, they're like, are you okay? I'm like, yes,
completely.
I'm still
That's hilarious.
I don't know.
Prior to this, so you're based in Denver, correct?
I'm based in Denver. Yes.
I think it's really interesting to talk to designers. It's funny because you want to be through COVID and not talk about pandemic anymore. But I'm finding that right now it's even more important. We're actually in the phase right now where going back and talking about all the things that we learned is really important because we're at this phase right now, which is really interesting. And I'm curious if you're finding the same thing, that all the things that we learned during COVID, we're starting to forget and get back to other ways of doing it because everything is wide open again. And I'm wondering if that's not doing a disservice to all of the time, energy, effort spent to learning all of these new skills.
Mhm.
And how has that changed your practice? And are you finding that the same where you are? Because Denver wasn't a big lockdown city, were you?
Um, we were I'm in Denver, Denver proper, the city of Denver. And we were at times you drive 20 minutes and it wasn't. So, county based. Um, but we are our um, officials were very strict in the beginning.
Oh, you were.
So playgrounds were closed, like taped off, like you couldn't get in. And people are used to being outside here. They were advising people not people in Denver not go to the mountains and, be in those smaller areas.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
it's interesting.
so it was kind of like an in between. I actually was working on all construction projects and with clients that were not living in the homes, but also very, 65 and above and health risks. So construction kept going. The clients were not living there. Meetings became more on Zoom or spaced out outside. So there wasn't, for me personally, there was no pause. It was, let's figure this out, keep going, and family and whatnot.
What are you seeing right now in Colorado from you talk to we're in this really weird time in the industry where there is recession someplace. There is still difficulty getting materials someplace. There is still cost overruns in some places, but not in others. It's a very weird time. This idea of recession, I think that we've been in it already for 2 quarters as of the recording today in December of 2022. I also think that we're seeing this split version of a recession where you have the luxury side of the business. I mean, you tell me, but I don't see any slowdown to the luxury side of the business. But the lower end, those who might have been on the verge, it's those new clients that might be on the verge of being able to hire an interior designer. Those seem to be the people who have been most affected by this so far. Are you seeing that, or is it different where you are?
I think you can see that. I think with my clientele base and kind of I'm not seeing it from the clientele base that I deal with on the luxury side. With the amount of projects or how quickly people move through projects has slowed down. If that, and there's a certain, what should I say? The people that are approaching me that are still, new home purchasing homes, they've already been established in maybe a smaller home or new to the area, and they're buying their 10 to 15 year home. So I'm still seeing those larger home purchases and then to furnish. But I think, in general, people are taking more time to implement. I think during the pandemic, people were go in things like purchasing because of the fear of things. Every aspect of life was fear. Now we've kind of slowed down in many aspects. It's not just, part of the recession or, economy. It's other, okay, we can take a deep breath. We don't have to do a mask here. The kids are in school. Everyone's still learning how to be again. in a different way.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I think someone like you is probably best prepared for something like this. And it's interesting because I'm curious what your take is now. Here we are in 2022, coming off 3 years of really challenging times. There is a whole group of creatives like you who started their own journey, their own creative journey out of the ashes of the Great Recession in 07, 08. So you basically came out and started your firm in 09. Yeah. So, you kind of lived through watching what was happening in this. There's a housing crisis and a cash shortage and this bubble that burst. And now you had to be thinking at the time, I don't mean to speak for you, but you had to be thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do? Why don't I just go work at a bank? But no,
Well,
how did that, how do you think about it now in contrast to how you thought about it then?
so I'd been in New York from 05 to 07. I moved to Denver in 07. I worked for, the high-end residential designer in the area, and then went off on my own in 2009. And I knew I wanted to have my own business before I went to college. I knew I wanted to do design and have my own residential firm when I was 21. And in 09, 08, fall 9, I said to myself, well, no one's hiring. No one's going to hire. Let's move beyond that. Let's not even approach, I'm efficient. I like to get to the point. So it's time to start the business. I knew I wanted to have a family at some point. I knew that this is not the ideal time in 2009, but we're gonna start. And I did have a little pushback here or there from mentors and whatnot. But at the same time, I had a few people in my life, my father and mother and a client mentor say, go, do it. You know what you're doing. So I don't look back on that time today thinking I should have done this or I should have done that. I think back on that as, wow, look what you did then. You can do it. So any doubt I ever have in my mind currently at any point, it's more of you did that and you pushed through, a few people that were questioning, what I might need more of to where, to 14 years later. So I think with the pandemic, it was more of me thinking about where I see myself later, like in the future, and what fulfills me. I was very strict about my business when I started it, and my goals I set, I was very rigid in my mind about it. And then in, let's say, 2016, 2017, I said, I've given my clients what they want. I've listened to them. I've made them happy. What is going to creatively fill my mind? I've always been some sort of artist. My mother was an art teacher. You're supposed to draw outside the lines. You're supposed to look at things in an objective way. Going to museums my whole life, art is a huge foundation for me. And I love interior design, and I love helping people figure out what they need and showing it to them, in the final room. but what in my head is going to fulfill me? So I think that what the recent years have done is slow me down a little bit and be less rigid and lean in a little bit more to the potential opportunities out there. There's a lot of times that things happen where, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening now. And, living in the moment thinking, over the past 5 years with Crabbit and this fabric line and what it took to get here and that process, and look at where it is today. What is the potential for tomorrow and a year from now and 2 years from now? And I think that it's given me a deep breath and it's fulfilled that creative piece of me. And I'm more joyful about life and creation. I'm starting to more recently think of myself more as an artist. When someone says, hi, who are you? Nadia Watts, I'm a designer. It's my soul. And now I'm rethinking my, title per se. So I don't, did I answer the question? I went off. I tend to do that.
No, I love that. And it got me thinking about a couple of things, because I think the idea of title is so important. It really is, insofar as how we self-identify, and the reason why, and I don't mean to get too far down the philosophical road here, but I think it's important. And I don't think creatives, I've given the title of creative to designers, architects, artists, makers a long time ago, because I think having that category is a differentiator. There are, and here's an example. I think that there are, and there's nothing wrong with this, but there are designers who work for, say, an Ethan Allen, and they do a great job at what they do, but they're designers for one line. It doesn't mean that they're not creatives necessarily, because they're creating a space, but they're using one line to create that space. I think the idea of a multidisciplinary creative is someone who, and I want to dive deeper a little into art, because art to me is kind of like this X factor in design and architecture. You were recognized by the ICAA. Many creatives that I've spoken to, some stay away from art because it can blow a budget. It can completely change a project, an entire project. It can ruin families and destroy cities, and it can be terrible. The way I feel about art, I love art. And it's one of the things I wanted to talk to you. I'm looking at your Rocky Mountain residence, and I'm looking at this dining room, which is it is a traditional space. You have modern spaces, ultra colorful. This particular residence is there's some monochromatic stuff I want to talk to you about, but I'm looking at this dining room and I'm looking at this large format piece, and you're not afraid to use art to not just finish a space, but to actually define it. And I'm curious when that started for you, how you view art, how you navigate all of the pitfalls that surround it, the costs, he hates it, she loves it, it's too feminine, it's not masculine enough. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You are listening to my conversation with designer Nadia Watts. We'll be right back. We are living at a time of incredible growth, both technologically and creatively, with respect to interior design, exterior design, and architecture. There is no question. There are companies thinking differently about the business of design and how to make products super serve those for whom they're being made. One of those companies, and one of my favorites, is Moya Living. designer and fabricators of some of the most stunningly beautiful, incredibly durable, and highly functional kitchen, bath, and outdoor kitchen cabinetry on the market today. Powder-coated steel with stunning lines, vibrant colors to fit any design style or aesthetic. A history of designing cabinetry for the scientific community, so you know it's been tested in some of the truly the most harsh conditions available. Moya O'Neill is the CEO and founder of Moya Living. She's the inspiration behind the design. Designers, their specification process is so simple. It will make your job so much easier. Check them out online through the socials at Moya Living, their website, moyaliving.com, and in the real world, their live kitchen showroom in Fountain Valley, California. The Institute of Classical Architecture and Art Southern California chapter is a forum for professionals in the industry and enthusiasts to come together, share their love, and show their commitment to the timeless principles of beauty, proportion, and observation that are embodied in classicism. Their members include renowned architects, designers, landscape architects, builders, students, artists, and creatives from every walk of life. It's a wonderful organization designed to celebrate the unique regional identity of Southern California and help develop the careers of the like-minded. If you're interested in joining or would like to learn more about sponsorship and support for the ICAA Southern California chapter, please email me, convobydesign@outlook.com.
I grew up outside of DC in Alexandria, Virginia, and there's pictures of my mom, 8 months pregnant, standing in the sculpture, garden at the National Gallery of Art. It's in my blood. It's a part of me before I even arrived. And I was taught to look at art and homes and architecture, all of it, because it all falls under the same space objectively. And, going to museums every weekend and then going up to New York and visiting my grandmother and going to the Guggenheim and the Met and the MoMA and Whitney, all of those. We'd start with a show or a gallery, and my mom would then say, which was your favorite piece? And she would say that to me as early as I could speak. Which is your favorite piece? And I would say it. We'd go over to it. And she'd go, why is it your favorite piece? So that, even just describing that right now, that touches my soul. That is in my blood and soul. And so taking that then into design, a piece of art is appealing to me immediately because of the scale, because of the interest, because of the thoughts that come about, how it relates to you personally or someone else, how it relates to the other pieces in the room if it's a gallery, how the light hits it, what's the wall color, all of these pieces are on my mind. How is it placed in the gallery? And art is very personal for homeowners. So there's been, over the years, there's different aspects of it. I normally, I have clients that come to me with large art collections that we need to pick and choose what comes into the next home. Or we create walls that they need to find a piece for, and they get to go and look at Christie's and Sotheby's and whatnot. So there's all different, there's different directions that we as myself and the client take to go about that. And then I have clients that want to buy pieces. or have a few pieces and want to add to it. And I like to listen to both, if it's two people, listen to both people and analyze kind of what the space needs. So I think of it more about what the space needs: size, color, dimension, how that room relates to the next room. What art are you seeing in the kitchen that then, you would see at the same time in the hallway? So you're like sight lines. So all of those things are in my head when I'm walking a space with a client and suggesting pieces. And because it is personal and, one person and with clients that are couples, at times, one person might not like it, but the other person does. Well, it's both of their homes. So we have to kind of go, we have to go from there. So maybe it goes in their study and the other person doesn't see it. So, I really listen and respect that conversation dynamic between the couple and the client, because you have to, that's not, I'm not going to force someone to use a color on an upholstery piece if they don't like that color. I'm not going to push a piece of art that they're just steadfast about. Now, I will bring pieces over and kind of say, oh, let's try this, and maybe you keep it for a few days and let me see, and we can always come and take it back. So it's the conversation that I create with the client and the comfort level to then move to that next step of purchasing art. And, as for pricing, there's art varies all over. I've framed their children's art in a really interesting way and context. And it's fabulous. So, the budget piece is more, it is what it is, and we can find something, within there, and be creative about that. Okay. Did I get all those? Did I answer all those pieces? Let's see.
Yeah, you did. You did. And it's really interesting because going from that project and there's a couple of spaces in here, a couple of bedrooms where they are fairly monochromatic, where you've still incorporated a fair amount of art in those spaces. And there's a bed, and above that, and by the way, as I describe these things when we publish the episode, if you're following along, go to Nadia's website. There will be links in the show notes, and you can click on the links to her website to see these projects as well. So there's you're looking at what is a monochromatic space where you've not completely, but you've also got the art which is muted, where there's two pieces that are white above the bed, which I think is really interesting. And I wanted to ask about that in contrast to your downtown loft, which is literally jammed with art. And I don't mean that in a negative, I mean that in an absolute positive manner, because here's what I can tell from this project, and you can tell me I'm completely wrong, or there's something to it, that they love art. You have art that's juxtaposed against the city with the windows. It just all comes together. That must have been a blast for you.
Oh, yes. Do you want me to elaborate?
No, we can just sit here for the next 20 minutes and look at it.
I know.
It would be a terrible podcast episode, but we could. But
everyone go look, go click on the link.
No, but listen, as far as a place of, for elaboration, when you go look at this, if you're following along and you do go look at this, there's a couple of things that you did that I think are really interesting. One is, there is a bedroom where literally between the bed and the wall, you have two very small nightstands, small bedside tables. It is a very small room, yet you still found space for a couple of sculptures and two fairly large format pieces. So against a window, which added to the balance of a very, very tiny room, but it opened it up and it made it so cozy and so comfortable. The rest of this loft, what I'm seeing is that it's not a huge space, but even on a narrow wall between two windows overlooking the skyline, you still found a way to go floor to ceiling framed art.
Mhm.
Tell me about the idea that the clients gave you and how you framed this, how you structured it. And I also think it's interesting that it's in a city like Denver, where I'm based in Tulsa, working on a design house project here. And Tulsa is not like Denver. Denver's a lot more friendly between the fall and the spring areas. There's a little bit extra time, but summer and winter still gets incredibly hot and incredibly cold. Yet you still have doors that completely open the entire space up. There are windows everywhere. It's flooded with light, and I imagine that it's a remarkable space to showcase art, and these clients must love it. And I imagine you were just like a kid in a candy store going to town on this thing.
Mhm. This is a client that I've been working with before I began. This is a client. The wife is an architect and the husband is in development. They both are very and have been involved in historical preservation in Denver, restoring buildings and whatnot. And this move to this loft downtown was from a home that they raised their children in, their now adult children. And I had helped them, I'd worked on an addition with the previous house. So I knew their collection and their taste inside and out. We had to pick our favorites because we couldn't have everything. And, I would use the word gallery versus, jam-packed, just from a creative. Just saying. It's about the scale. Earlier I mentioned how, the attraction to art in a museum has to do with the scale of what the piece is, but where it's placed. And I see in scale. I draw in scale. And there's also balances, to that, where yes, the art on this very thin wall that one would expect some reprieve or negative space. We went floor to ceiling with frame pieces. And it works because it continues your eye around the view. And if you notice the art there, you notice it. And if you don't, well, then you're not meant to notice it. But it's more of it's a comfort thing as well, where you're balancing with scale. In the bedroom with the very skinny tables, and the bed and the large piece above it. Some would be completely afraid to do that. This client was not afraid of suggestion or let's try it. And though those type of people can be rare in this industry, because people want to have order, or they want to have order. They want to be in a box. Sometimes they want it to be how it is and never touch it again. Where, the way you live and the comfort and the flow and the soul of a home needs to be, we need to be ever changing in our lives and in our home. And by, moving pieces of art or trying something different is a way to find that. One piece might feel okay, but if you switch it out, the other piece would be just right. It's the willingness. This couple has the willingness to try something new and listen to that. And I think that's how this loft really works, is the client willing to try something that's suggested. Also, they have collected art over the years. And I don't want to say up and coming. I want to say friends, young artists, friends from college that are now, still friends and older and retiring type of thing. And by collecting that way, there is a piece of time and history and life, and you care about those pieces. And it feels really good when you walk into that space because of that. And it's loved because of all the pieces that you see around. Yeah. It makes me smile.
I want to press on a soft spot a little bit, though, because something you said was you would call it more of a gallery space than jam-packed. And for you and design, you view certain things certain ways. For me and words, I view things certain ways too. And I think it's interesting that you not only picked up on that, but sort of made the distinction between the two. I kind of feel there may be a negative connotation to jam-packed, perhaps saying taking a maximalist view of something is a different way to put it. But I think jam-packed really, to me, and keep in mind, I'm not an artist, I'm not a designer, I'm not an architect, I'm a journalist and an observer. And I don't view jam-packed in the same negative sense that I think you do, because, as an artist, as a creative, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and viewing that word. I see it the other way around. I think that you have a client who tasked you to do something that is to take as much of what they love and to fit it into a smaller footprint. And when I view a gallery, I think of a gallery as something completely different. I think a gallery is meant to showcase pieces of art. I think a home that you didn't dapple this project with art. You put it everywhere you could find a space because that's what you were tasked to do. And in many cases, as you mentioned, you could take one away, replace it with something else, and it would not detract from the project. That's an art form. I'm looking at the kitchen and a top shelf, there's a piece there. I'm looking at the countertop. I'm looking at a series of 3 pieces there. I'm looking at the column, floor to ceiling. What I get from that is something very different, which is why, I say jam-packed as a positive, certainly not a negative. But here's the point. To me, the point is we have spent, 3 years, life disjointed. And let's be honest about something. You've been in it a while. I've been in it a while. There are what we would call purists who feel you have to follow these rules to have good design. You have some who will say, oh, I would never do that in my home because ... At the same time, home has become sacred again. And I feel like it lost that designation over time, because if you wanted to go somewhere to get recharged, all you had to do is go online, book a ticket, go to the airport, go somewhere. It's not until you lose things that you realize that you can't always, you have to appreciate the things that you love and the things that you have and the things that you want to surround yourself with. And in this particular case, you were clearly tasked with putting as much of what somebody loves in their home. And because of that, your ideas of how the home fits the client, has that changed for you over the course of the past 3 years? Has it changed you as a designer? Has it changed you as a creative? Do you think differently about the conversations you have with your clients so as to get to the point that you understand what they really want and really need for you to do?
When I started my business, my focus was to listen to what the client wanted and their needs and how they function in a space, how their family lives, what their goals are. And that's how I started my design process for the rooms and homes. I didn't start off with a specific style that I was going to deliver. You can see in my portfolio a wide range of styles, and something that's a core belief in me is, as a designer, you understand, or I'll say I understand the different styles. I went to the New York School of Interior Design, within studying art history and the periods and painting and all of the education foundation, the way I look at things, to be able to listen to someone and give them what they're asking for was a key for me. And I think, to your point, words, people can take words in a positive or negative way. And I try to be very mindful in the words that I say with clients, because there are positive or negative connotations, and someone's head just jumps to, a flash or something when you use certain words. I've always been asked, well, what's your style? From clients. And I say, no, this is about your home. Let's keep going. And I brush over it. And then I really try to get into the head of the client and what's in front of me and what we're doing. And that skill of seeing depths of color and variations in color that, you see in that Rocky Mountain home, the subtleties of the layers of different shades of neutrals. And I think that what has changed for me in the recent years is I'm not afraid to say I'm eclectic. I'm eclectic. That's my style. And I love color, and I want to be happy in my home. The last 6 years or so, I want to walk into my house and smile and be cheerful. I have a 6 and 9-year-old, my husband loves color. I want to be happy in my home when I walk in. And I've really, I've leaned into that, and I'm willing to share that with others and be okay with the comments back on, because, a minimalist or someone that wants a very neutral palette, the word eclectic is scary. It's a scary style. So I think I'm sensitive to those words. And I think I'm designing more, what makes you happy? What do you want to be around? What should we get rid of? What should we recover? What do you want to reuse from your family? Asking these questions that go deeper than just, here's, this is my inspiration that I want my house to look like. Nadia, help me get there. And taking that time to really understand what brings the joy and the balance between the couple or the family and how they're using the space. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of things in the air that you're thinking of to then implement the design and start that creative process. Did I answer the question?
I'm seeing a theme here, by the way. Did I answer the question?
Did I run off?
Seriously,
I could just talk. This is going to be like a 10-hour podcast.
No. You know what's funny though? In all honesty, seriously, who cares if you answer the question? Like I'm here to learn more about you. So my questions don't matter if it takes us somewhere meaningful. And I think each of these have, and it's really interesting. You talk about eclectic. A friend of mine, designer, he and I would get in these arguments because I love the word eclectic. I really do. And he hates it to this day. And he would say, it's not eclectic, it's collected. And I'm like, that is such bullshit. It's not that it's collected. It's what you do with it. Like eclectic to me, collected means it's all income, right? I see eclectic as a major contributor to that idea is in the edit. Eclectic is collecting all of these different things in different styles without a necessarily a through line to any of them. Mm-hmm. But then it's the art form is where you go with that idea to make it, instead of just some maximalist garage sale, now it's a highly collected, yes, but still very eclectic due to its differentiation. But it all works together, kind of like how you said, you can take one away, put something in its place, and it didn't detract from the design or from the work. I love that. I think that's fantastic. I think that there's a level of bravery there in the work that makes it so special.
I think being raised in a household that you were allowed to be objective about the things around you and architecture and art and artists, and now putting words to that and digging deeper for me over the last few years, it's as if I was being trained at a young age to be where I am today. It's as if there's a reason I'm sitting here speaking to you about this and how it makes me feel discussing those relationships with the clients and the art and the space. It really hits me deep, and that's what I've gotten out of the last few years is even though it's a mental slowdown for myself, the world has not been slow per se in the fight or flight, that we now have in a certain way. And, I've been asked to, discuss my family and how that influenced me. And it's interesting to go back, 20 years, 18 years, when I worked at the Met in American Decorative Arts, and how that, learning and hearing things and just being around it all sunk in. And being around, my parents and my grandmother and how they lived in the spaces and how they used furniture and the balancing. It's all about the scale. It's about the balance of the pieces. And it's amazing now to put words to it, where before and in the beginning of my business, it was more of a feeling where I would say to a client, this is going to work and this is this. And that's it. And now I'm adding more of the why and the feeling. And I think that the last few years have given that more, how do you feel? Asking someone how they feel, we're not used to doing. We're not used to asking people how they feel or kind of what they think and go deeper. And I'm going to be doing a lecture at a Tiffany exhibit in Florida at a garden, and in February, and they want me to speak on how Louis Tiffany inspired my interiors, or how I think of that as inspiration.
And by the way, I love that. And because you mentioned it, it's so funny. We're at the end of this thing, and we're going to have to circle back, because that was your great grandfather.
My great grandfather was Louis Comfort Tiffany,
which is something we've actually just kind of ran out of time to get into that. I would love to explore more of that in the future. I definitely have to have you back on the show, certainly to talk about that. Nadia, this was so much fun. I so appreciate the time today. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles. Thank you, Nadia. I appreciate the time and love what you do. Thank you to my partners and sponsors, Thermosol, Moya Living, and Design Hardware. Your partnership is what makes this show possible, and your support for the design industry, it's amazing, and I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to subscribe, download, and listen to the show. If not already, please make sure you subscribe so you get fresh episodes the moment they're published. And remember why you do what you do and for whom you do it. Be well. And until next week, take today first.